I'm not here to solve your problem. I'm here to set you up for success to solve your own problems.
Welcome to the Team Amplifier Podcast. I'm your host, Byron Summerdahl. Here you'll be inspired by industry leaders who build flourishing tech teams. Stay tuned and prepare to be amplified.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, we're here with Nate Abele, and I'm excited about this conversation today because we're talking about making people feel like owners. Nate's been in the tech space for quite a while. He's an advisor to startups and a tech leader just in general. And we're going to have a good time talking about this today. But Nate, before we get started, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you've got going on.
Sure. The standard list that I rattle off is amateur Jesus follower, professional husband and dad, open source cat herder, international speaker, one exit startup founder, robotics taker, and jiu-jitsu white belt.
Just to name a few things.
That's about it. Yeah, just this is the standard stack of things.
What is your most recent escapade or thing that you've got that you're spending most of your time on?
My most recent escapade, does it have to be one thing? Right now, my time is mostly spent advising startups and being a little bit hands-on technically with a few of them. Despite the sort of industry disparagement, I have genuinely enjoyed vibe coding, even as someone who would have shunned the output in a previous iteration of my life/career.
Well, I can't disparage it because I haven't tried it yet, but I'm definitely intrigued by that and pretty much every other people trying to integrate AI into their productivity workflows. So I'm actually, maybe we can talk about vibe coding at some point. You can kind of educate me. So Nate, what's a book that you've been reading lately that has made an impact on you?
So the book that I've been reading lately is Boundaries with Kids, and it has had an impact. This sounds sort of terrible and patronizing, but it has had an impact on my sort of thinking as a technical leader. Not because like people, the people that I lead or whatever are children or anything like that, but it's like there's a similar power dynamic, and there's the sense that like, so your job as a parent is not to raise children, it's to grow adults, right? And by the same token, when you're a leader, your job is to raise and grow other leaders. So you're always self-replicating. Anyone who's really good, that's what they're doing, is they're leading people into being leaders themselves.
I really like that. This is an unexpected kind of twist, or getting some tech leadership goodness out of something that's not even in that discipline at all, but I can definitely see the parallels. And it's worth a read. I think I started reading Boundaries for Kids. Is that like a Gary Chapman book?
No, it's Cloud and Townsend. They're Henry Cloud and
yes.
I forget the other guy's first name, but they're the ones who do all the Boundaries books that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like the
so
Boundaries guys. Yeah, really good stuff.
Generally good books, and definitely let's get some good leadership, because it's kind of like herding cats sometimes. Raising kids or growing adults can be kind of like herding cats, and the same thing with when we're leading a bunch of technologists in our care and trying to turn them into leaders. I like it.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Nate, one of my favorite things to do in this show is to have confession time. I don't know if you're ready for this, but I told you about this before and warned you, but it's time to humanize our guest while we are trying to humanize tech leadership. So tell me, what is the most embarrassing thing you've done as a tech leader?
So I have stories. You specifically asked for a story that was fun and lighthearted, but all of my stories, at least that I could think of, are either embarrassing or fun and lighthearted, but not both. I think we can get a good laugh at my expense out of this one, though. So I feel like that is worth something. And there's a good lesson at the end. So I was leading a startup. This was sort of been was starting in March of 2020. Yeah, March of 2020. So like literally within, 2 weeks or something that COVID hit. I was a tech leader at a startup. We got acquired. I had a team of about a dozen people, maybe a little less. We got acquired by our lead investor. It's this huge financial services firm, $4 billion company, publicly traded, all the whole nine, right? Huge culture shock. Try to make it work for a while. And, when you're in that position leading other people, it's like you have to kind of get over your own crap for their sake a little bit. So there's some learning on my part there. But we tried to make it work for a while. I hated it. So about 6 months in, I negotiated an exit package with leadership that would have me stay on another 6 months and, hand everything off and, make sure that there was smooth sailing once I left. And so towards the end of it, I was sort of preparing to hand off the team to the next most senior guy. And we had a new hire at the time who wasn't really working out. He was maybe 30, 45 days in. And we had a policy. We had a pretty high agency team culture. And one of the ways that we enforce that is part of our hiring policy was you're basically on probation for the first 90 days. And we're going to have check-ins every, 30, 60 days. At 30 and 60 days to sort of let you know how you're doing. So worst case scenario, by day 60, it's you're going to know how this is going. And in the very worst case scenario, hey, we'll give you, 4 weeks of severance and help you, move on to something else. So that was the way we operated at the startup. We negotiated that with corporate HR when we were required, because that's not their standard procedure. And they approved, they signed off on it. But when it came time to tell this guy, it wasn't working out, HR backed out of our deal. So they were like, no, you can't do this. You have to keep him on the team and give him a performance improvement plan and, all the usual corporate nonsense. So I basically told them that I'm going to tell him he's fired, and what you want to do with that is up to you. Well, I got fired a week before what was supposed to be my last day. And I believe that was a Friday. And the way they do it is so, I don't know, it's very snake-like. Corporate HR is just not my favorite. They have these, they never mean what they say a lot. I wouldn't say never, but a lot of times. So I got called into this meeting to discuss it. And it was basically a forum for me to say whatever I was going to say, but the outcome was predetermined. So it's here's what's going to happen. You're going to hand in your laptop and, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. And you can, have your exit package. And so that was a Friday. The following Monday, I got a call from my boss because they couldn't ship the mobile app because I hadn't finished handing everything off. So I was like, no, I want to hear it from the person who fired me. So she sends me an email saying, no, it's okay. You can come back. I'm like, okay, all right. I'll come back only because I'm very nice and I want to help my team, not for you. But after that, I basically got, 4.5 days of paid vacation. And because this would have been March of 2021, so 1 year post-acquisition, the government was running a deal on my behalf, apparently, because if you got fired during that certain window right after COVID, you got COBRA, free, generously provided by the company that fired you. So I got fired. I got a week almost of paid vacation, and I got free healthcare for 6 months. So the moral of the story is, standing on your principles doesn't always pay off, but sometimes it does.
All right. And in this case, the principle was we want to be able to try people out in a way that makes sense. And
so it's beyond that. It's we have an interview process that does its best, but the only real way to get to know someone, in terms of a working relationship, is to actually just work with them. So that's one side of it. The other side is if you don't control hiring, firing, and raises, then it's not your team.
Yeah. All right.
So
I can take that.
Yeah.
I can work with that. Yeah. Embarrassing, not so much. Kind of, maybe, I don't know. Never fun to get fired. But next time you're on the show, I'm going to challenge you to bring something truly embarrassing.
All right.
Flat on your face, embarrassing.
All right. Yeah. Well, I have one that I can share.
But is it the time that the people died?
Nobody died. Nobody died this time. There were definitely some hurt feelings, though. Yeah. Do you want to get into that?
I mean, I'm okay with it. We got time. Go ahead.
All right. If we got time. So same job, same startup.
HR
prior
again?
to acquisition. No. This is prior to acquisition. So it was just, we're not answering to any corporate overlords. So I had a guy on my team, very senior guy, younger, a little bit of a hot shot. When I say very senior, he was good. Like he was pretty good. A little bit of a hot shot. I made a comment in a PR about comparing him to Batman, like sarcastically, kind of jokingly, for not like paying attention to something or like missing some details because, Batman's a detective. And he took it really hard. And we eventually had, a resolution on that. And I felt really bad because I thought we were just joking, but like he took it really seriously. Like he was like going through some things at the time, but it was clear that I just totally misread the situation. I felt really stupid. And the thing that I learned from that is like, when you're in a leadership position, you can't take that for granted. It's like, yes, you can be, friendly and collegial with the people that you're working with, but there's a power dynamic there that you can't overlook. When you say things, people tend to take them really seriously. And I didn't appreciate that prior to that incident.
I learned something similar, and I don't know if this is the same thing that applies, but I used to be very loose with my employees, and I would joke around like really early in the relationship building process.
Yeah.
And it blew up in my face a few times. I wonder if it's the same thing. Like I'm imagining you're in a meeting with this guy and he gets finished saying something and you maybe slightly disagree and you're just like, all right, Batman, let's see if this is that what's the context?
Yeah, kind of similar.
And so it must have. We have to remember that they're not our friends, and they're not our family. As much as even with my kids are not my friends. I am not their friend. I'm their dad, and if dad is better than friend. But it also means there are some boundaries. There are some lines, and maybe that's what we got to deal with too as leaders. Is they're not necessarily our friends. Maybe we're something better than a friend at this point in time in their lives, and maybe that also means there are some extra boundaries. Again, go back to that same book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in general, I really hate when companies use the rhetoric of "Hey, we're a family," because that's a totally different. Like families are an end unto themselves, and they sort of exist to self-perpetuate. And you're in a relationship where it's generally pretty permanent, and you have to put up with the other person's nonsense, whether you want to or not. But a team exists to serve a mission, and we don't have to put up with each other's nonsense, especially if it's distracting from the mission. And so the purpose, like purpose really informs everything, right? So when you're comparing one type of entity with another, if the purpose is totally different, it's like, this is not, like, you can't make this comparison. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about what we've got on the docket for today, which is making our team feel like owners. They're not owners. They're not actually owners. Probably neither are we, to an extent. Like as far as like owning the IP, owning the company, we might not be the owners, but there's still this mentality, this way of carrying yourself, this way of looking at problems that is how an owner would look. And that's what we want to achieve with our teams. Let's talk about why. So what do we mean by making them feel like owners?
Yeah. So ownership, like you alluded to, is really a mindset. It's not like you literally own I mean, maybe you do. If it's a startup, maybe you have some equity, so you feel like it, but you're not ultimately the one calling the shots. It's really about having a sort of zone of designated authority where you're within that zone, whether it's the back end or some service or whatever, you are God of that thing. What you say goes, but at the same time, that's paired in lockstep with you're accountable for how it's going and whether or not it's working out and achieving its objectives. So we would have within the startup, we would have like different regions of responsibility, a really important partner integration. Somebody would own the technology and the relationship of that integration. And if anything went wrong with that, we would go to that person. By the same token, that person got to make all the decisions about how that integration worked. So he fully owned that. And that was really effective and made it really clear, like, when something goes wrong, who do you talk to? And there were no areas of the software or really of the business where someone didn't own it. Like they might not have been available and there's, fallback procedures in an emergency for like a second in command or something. So there were, multiple other people, for example, who were aware of how that integration existed and could work on it. But there was one person who was the responsible party.
Right. So we're not talking about creating silos and like peeling off an entire section of the business logic or of the entire system and saying, okay, you, Steve, you are the owner of this. No one else goes into your silo. You're the only one.
Right.
Because obviously that's bad.
Right.
But what you're talking about is to give extra accountability and responsibility over sections of the app or the entire app or the system so that people are filling in the gaps, seeing needs, filling needs, and generally caring for the overall system and the company beyond just the little, just beyond the Trello card that they're working on or the Jira issue.
Right. Exactly. And that person has to be grounded in, okay, here's how this integration and this partnership impacts the business. Here's what's important. Here's what's driving the different needs that are sitting behind these Trello cards. And so that person is empowered to make decisions about like, okay, I got this card in that's asking for, this data point. Well, that actually doesn't make sense. So we need to do it this way. And then we'll be like, okay. So, I, as the CTO, I establish certain boundaries around like, okay, here's how we're going to architect our systems. Here's security standards, different things like that. And then within that boundary, there's that word again, each of my sort of sub leaders are able to execute on whatever the piece of the system is that they own without constantly checking in with me about what to do, because they have the technical and the business context to understand how their piece fits into it and where we need to go with it.
So this whole podcast is all about how team leaders, tech leaders can help their teams to flourish. So let's connect these two concepts. Making them feel like owners. It might be kind of obvious some of the reasons, but let's just get them out there on the table. What does making them feel like owners have to do with human flourishing?
Sure. It's a great question. There's a book by Daniel Pink called Drive. And one of the things, if not like the core thing, if I recall, that he talks about is what humans need to flourish in a working environment are three things. Mastery. So you have a craft, you need to at least have the opportunity to continuously improve at that craft. That is something that a company can facilitate, bare minimum by just giving people interesting work to work on. But ultimately that's a self thing. Like you have to do that for yourself. Autonomy, the ability to work without, onerous constraints or onerous or particularly arbitrary constraints about how you're getting your work done. And purpose, it's like you have to understand like what it is that you're contributing to. And having this ownership mindset, this ownership mentality and teaching it to people is the most effective way that I have found to do that. And I would say I sort of stumbled onto it by accident, having come from large open source projects. It's like I started a project or, co-started with other people, and all of these other people want to come along and work on this project for free. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about like what motivates people to do that. And it really is those three things. So it's the opportunity to participate in something greater than themselves. So that's purpose. Autonomy, it's like, well, no one's making them do anything. They're choosing sort of independently. And mastery, they get to, as part of this process of contribution, they get to participate with other people who have all come together to improve their craft in the context of this project.
Man, coming from open source, that's something I haven't thought of recently, or maybe ever, is that when you're working with open source and you're able to build a community of contributors,
Yeah.
really people are in it for their own like intrinsic reasons.
Yeah.
They want to be there. They
Right.
feel a sense of ownership, maybe right off the bat, because they're the ones that autonomously brought themselves to the project and signed up and decided to become a part of the project. When you've got them in a different situation where they are employees, they are paid to be there on a daily basis, it's not a stretch. It's just harder. I mean, you got to be more intentional to get them to feel like owners.
Yes.
How do you do it?
That is a great question. We had one guy who's a younger guy. He's pretty good. He's not one of the best on the team, but he's definitely like a solid contributor. But his background was like a very large corporate financial services firm. And that was like his first job out of college. And that was the only job that he had prior to coming to us. Obviously, a startup environment is worlds apart from that. So it was a process. It wasn't, quick turnaround, but he's a fast learner. It really was just a process of like, okay, wait, why did you spend all this time on this without, checking in or asking for help or whatever? And he's like, because, well, XYZ. And it's like, okay, well, XYZ is obviously informed by this previous environment. So it's just untraining all of those beliefs and habits of mind, so to speak, that lead to the behavior that we don't want to see. And it's like, through no fault of his own, that's just the environment that he was brought up in at the beginning of his career. So it's just a training process. Like you just have to meet people where they're at and, work them towards the goal one step at a time.
Well, I can guess one answer to this next question based on what you just said. So the question is, why don't more leaders try to build this into their culture and make people feel like owners? And just to throw the first one out there, I think it has something to do with intentionality. Like it's not automatic. Maybe it feels,
Yes.
I mean, it is something extra that we have to kind of, as a leader, you have to go through some mental gymnastics a little bit to switch from command and control to instilling this sense of ownership into your people.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people just end up in leadership, which is, not intentional in and of itself, and things reproduce after their kind. So it's, if you just sort of ended up in leadership, you're not really maybe thinking about leadership very intentionally. So, I mean, first of all, people have to even be aware that style of leadership or management is an option. If people are aware of it, I think a lot of people perceive it as risky. And if you're not secure in your own position as a leader, you're going to want to grasp for control, which is antithetical to, operating this way. Yeah, ultimately it's risky, and people a lot of times just feel like being in control. And so they're not going to do that.
Yeah, especially if you're somebody that just kind of ended up in leadership, especially if you've been in a lot of traditional companies, you're used to being given orders. So you were modeled this kind of leadership style that doesn't inspire people to feel like owners. And so when you go into leadership, you just keep on doing to people what they did to you and
Exactly.
kind of fall into it. It's accidental.
Right.
Yeah. Requires
100%.
some sort of like intentional decision to break the cycle and get out of this.
Yeah.
So let's just imagine that somebody's feeling inspired though right now. They're feeling inspired that they want to begin to instill ownership, the sense of ownership in their own people, build this culture. Let's speak to them just for a few minutes. What are some pitfalls that they're going to hit along the way that maybe we can warn them about?
So accountability and authority have to increase in lockstep with each other. Like those have to be kept in sync. And you also don't want to immediately turn around and be like, okay, we're implementing this in a culture where people are used to basically the opposite of that. You kind of have to grow it start small. You want to be able to test people, not in the sense that you're, oh, I have to test you because I'm in charge and, I'm going to see if you can handle it. You want to help people grow their confidence and their capacity in being more autonomous. And also you don't want to put the business at risk. We actually did have one incident where I had a more junior guy who's, really bright, really eager, really motivated, but not always the best judge in terms of decision making. He was responsible for getting our mobile app approved. And as part of that, he gave credentials for a production system to an Apple employee through the review submission process. And it was like, dude, that was not, you can't do that. So mistakes will be made. Just try to think about when you're delegating authority, make sure people understand the blast radius of their decisions and try to proactively reduce that if you can.
Well, something occurs to me too, like even when I get brought in as a fractional CTO or just whatever you call the leader, when somebody brings me in, I'm not an owner. Probably. Most of the time, I'm not an owner. And I am being given the keys to the kingdom in a lot of ways. They're giving me a lot of authority to make a lot of decisions, but they still give me guardrails. There are certain, like you mentioned, blast radius. I know my blast radius, but then there are also things that are on the edges that prevent my blast radius from going too far out of bounds.
Right.
And I think as a tech leader, I want to inspire people to feel like owners. I want them to start to developing this mentality, but they also need to feel safe. So they need to know that that they're not really able to go out of bounds. Of course, that takes some extra intentionality again on my part to set up those guardrails and make sure that they have those protections and they know what those limits are. But that's something that I missed out on earlier on in my career whenever I was trying to, like you were saying with your more junior person, I also overstepped by giving too much ownership and authority to a younger developer. I didn't give them enough guardrails. So they failed, but it was really my failure because I didn't provide them with an environment where they could just fall into the pit of success.
Right. And that for you, that's taking ownership as a leader. So for a leader, taking ownership means everything that goes wrong is your fault. And if people know that you believe that, they will follow you.
So, Nate, can you tell me about a time in your own experience when making people feel like owners led to some unexpected results?
Well, that was one, the security breach. Fortunately, nothing really came of it because it's still a fairly secure environment.
That was unexpected.
It's, letting other people's financial information outside the company. But unexpected, I would say no, because there's really only two outcomes. And I've learned to accept both of them. Either people succeed or they fail. And I think I'm usually able to guess. Like don't get me wrong, I try to set people up for success whenever possible. At the same time, when you're operating in a startup environment, you need a certain type of person, and not everybody is in that place or capable of getting to that place in a reasonable amount of time. So I will set people up in contexts where it's like, okay, at a minimum, you have to be able to self-manage. And if you can't do that, we're going to, shuffle you along to another company where you're going to fit better. So yeah, in that sense, like most of the time, for the most part, not very surprising because, you can only go one of two ways.
Well, Nate, can you share with me a time when helping people to feel like owners led to some sort of unexpected result from your own experience?
Yeah. So same startup. I was initially brought in as a consultant to help advise on the architecture and implement some, high level pieces of it. I eventually became the CTO, and the company was really struggling. We weren't meeting deadlines. Progress was not what it needed to be. And eventually I brought in a business partner that I'd worked with for a number of years to run product. And he and I implemented this approach. Everybody had to read these 2 books, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Lying by Sam Harris, which there's some stuff about lying that is not worth getting into. But, you don't lie to yourself. You don't lie to other people, no matter what, pretty much is the point. That one's about a 2-hour read. Ownership is probably like more like a 15 to 18-hour read. I think we gave everybody like an extra vacation day in exchange for reading them, maybe 2. But that was the start of it. And we basically said, okay, we're going to stop working on everything that we're working on. And we're only going to work on these 3 things. These are our top priorities right now. If you're not working on one of these 3 things, so either figure out how to work on one of these 3 things. If you can't, hands off the keyboard. I don't even care what you do. Browse Reddit, whatever, right? And it was like that for a week. And our CEO was kind of like internally freaking out. Like he had a good poker face, to his credit. He really did. But it's like, you could tell the stress lines were forming around his temples. But he went with it. And we actually turned everything around from the perspective of delivery and actually delivering a product that maybe didn't do everything that was promised, but it worked. And we integrated with our first big enterprise customer in fairly rapid order, despite a number of challenges, because we basically called a halt on everything that all the ways in which we'd been operating previously, and just completely righted the ship and made it to limped our way to an exit that we would not have otherwise had. The company would have just, we would have gotten to the end of our runway and that would have been it.
How did the team having ownership make the difference for that scenario?
So the team having ownership got them out of sort of being mired in the technical conversations of like, okay, let's figure out how to change this database schema to account for, the enterprise customers' data not being the way that they said it was going to be. All of those conversations just kind of went away and people just started figuring it out. Like, people weren't coming to me asking me, what to do. This is kind of back to the boundaries for kids thing. Like, I'm not here to solve your problem. I'm here to set you up for success to solve your own problems. So I'm not like these, conversations about technical minutia are going away. I'm not the bottleneck on all of the decisions, and things are getting done because people are collaborating autonomously without having any gates. And whereas normally in this type of situation, even reaching out to like partners, customers, clients, that's reserved for the fancy class with the collared shirts and everything. It's like, no, I don't care who you are. If you need something from the customer or from one of our partners, just call them, shoot them an email, whatever. I don't care. Here's the boundaries. Here's the guardrails on like how we talk to people, what we wear when we're on a conference call with, somebody in this industry. And then just, go to town, loop me in as needed.
Awesome. Nate, can you share with us as we kind of wind down, can you share with us one thing that tech leaders should do tomorrow to start improving their team state, their team flourishing? What would that be?
They rely on their relationship with you. And, generally speaking, not every leadership situation is the same, but they look to you more than you probably realize. So if there are things that your team are doing or ways that they're behaving that you don't like, and there probably are, make a list of all of those things, make it really detailed, and then show up to work the next day and do and be that. And they will generally pay attention.
Wait. So make a list of all the things that you don't like that they're doing.
Team. Yep.
And then start doing those things?
Yeah, you make sure that you're doing and being those things yourself. And just give it a couple of weeks. And if you don't see a change, or if you don't see all the changes, just start calling things out. Don't call people out, but call things out. Say, hey, I've noticed that we're, doing X, Y, Z. I would really like if we could, do 1, 2, and 3 instead.
Okay. I'm scared of this one, but it's worth a try. It's worth a try. So if people are burping all day and I don't like that, then I should come to work and I should start burping.
No, I'm sorry. No burping for you.
Okay, so you see why I'm afraid.
Yeah, sorry. I maybe worded that a little confusingly. All the things that you don't want them to, don't do those things yourself. All the things that you do want them to, do those things yourself. You're modeling the behavior that you want to see.
This is better. Yeah. And it might have just been I need some more coffee. I might have just like misunderstood it, but yeah. So I was also thinking about like, okay, the person that smells bad and I should just stop using deodorant so that I also smell bad. And no, but this makes a lot more sense now that thank you for re-explaining it to me. But yeah, so I think the same thing goes for us in the home. Like my wife can't stand it when, I'll pull something out, like when I don't take the trash out, but then she'll take the trash out. And then I'm like, okay, you did it already. Now I can't redeem myself and do that. And then the next time, maybe I will just subconsciously, not intentionally, but subconsciously not take the trash out because my underbrain says she's just going to do it for me anyway. Yeah. But what you're saying
but at the same time, that there's a cost there where she expects you to do it and then you don't.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This is good advice for people.
And you can call it out like, say, hey, I noticed you didn't have anybody review that PR before you merged it. What's going on there? Just simple questions. You don't have to like haul people into the office and accuse them.
Oh, dude.
But,
yeah. Questions have saved me. I've called that very thing out a few times. And then they explained to me why. I didn't bother asking, but they were nice enough to explain to me why they did it that way. And it actually made sense what they did, why they did it. And I was like, oh, okay, dang. I probably should have just asked before I lit in.
Carry on. Yeah, and that's the thing. So the same CEO from the startup, the one thing that I saw him do that has absolutely changed my life is instead of like getting super frustrated and asking accusatory questions, and I wouldn't do this to my team. Maybe it happened once, I don't know. But this is like general life advice, like for when you're, calling customer service or whatever. Just keep it under control, keep it under wraps. Instead of saying like, why aren't you, whatever, just say, help me understand. It's a magical phrase. Help me understand. That's for like the extreme cases though, when you really want to say like, what the F were you doing here?
Yeah. Help me understand. I'm gonna try that tomorrow. See if my team doesn't give me a lot of opportunities to question them these days. They've trained me well, and they've done a good job. But I'll see if I can find a way to use it. Nate, this has been a great conversation. It's a very important concept, very important part of our culture that we need to be building, all of us. And so thank you for joining me in this conversation. And is there any way that people can maybe connect with you or be a part of what you're doing? Are you working on any open source stuff these days?
Nothing too serious. I have a few little projects that I'm always noodling with, but people can reach out to me. My website is nateabele.com, nateabele.com. Yes, it does redirect to a Google Doc. It's because I hate CMSs.
Yeah, pretty smart.
And I don't want to have to make yet another React app just to have a personal website. So it's me keeping it simple. But there's links on there for, all the usual suspects. If you want to book an intro call, there's a link down at the bottom as well. So
awesome.
Thank you for hosting. This has been a lot of fun and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
All right, sir. Have a great day.
Take care. You too.
This has been another episode of the Team Amplifier podcast. Thanks for joining us. Now, get out there and be a team amplifier.